Okay. I'm recording. Should be fine unless the Wi-Fi gets a bit iffy here. All right. Welcome everyone to everything you need to know when starting your OT career. I'm Dave Jerab and I'm with the amazing Clare Batkin, your OT tutor. I guess before we launch in and start to tell you a little bit about ourselves and then talk about the content, I might just do an acknowledgement of country unless you would like to, Claire.
That's all
We
right. You can, yep.
wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the lands on which we work, play, and connect. And we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and future. And to those on all of the lands that we're all on here. I took a detour today, which I might tell you the story, but so I thought I was going to be in Darkinjung country, but I'm now in, I think, Darugor country here at Move About Bella Vista today. Uh, Claire, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, hopefully you've taken a bit of time if you've signed up that you maybe explored some of the buttons and links that Dave and I threw in there so you know a little bit about us. But so I'm a clinical educator. My business is called Your OT Tutor, which I started probably about 2 years ago now. My background is that I worked in the hospital setting across a range of different caseloads. So I actually started as a new grad in a rotational hospital position. I know that's something we're going to chat about today. And was in there for about a decade and then have moved across into the NDIS private sector space now, doing like a community NDIS caseload, little bits and pieces of that, but probably more so now my clinical education business. But the other part of what I do is I work as a sessional academic for ACU, one of the universities. And I've had lots of students on placements. So basically what that's been able to give me is a good feel for what you're learning at uni, what you learn when you're on placements, and then what you need to know when you're a new grad working as well. So there's lots of different pieces which help pull together for people and produce lots of resources like courses and webinars and just resources that will hopefully help you if you're looking to try and get yourself off to a good start as an OT. Including a paid membership option as well, which is based on what I call the foundations of OT success, which is just some really core skills that you need to be able to be a better OT. And better is in terms of how you want to call it. So better as in happier, better as in more skillful, better as in more knowledgeable, better as in just, you know, finding the right fit for yourself as an OT. So that's probably me in a nutshell. And I'll touch on some more of those things once we start the conversation. Dave?
I'm Dave Jerab. I'm an OT. I've been OT for more than 20 years. I am also the co-founder of Move About Therapy Services. We've got clinics in Sydney, the Central Coast, and Newcastle with my beautiful wife, Kathy. We're both OTs. We've had Move About for nearly 17 years now. We've got about 25 to 30 OTs that we're lucky enough to get to work with. Our organizing principle at Move About is we support the people who support the kids, and that's our families, our team members, and our community. And there's lots we do with that. We host free and paid webinars, things like this, but also paid ones with master clinicians from the US and Canada. We also host live trainings as well. Last year we had Julie Wheelbarger. I was lucky enough to teach the sensory defensiveness course with her. We also had Kim Barthel out here doing trauma sensitive practice. This year we had the King of Swings out. And in November 21st, I will be hosting a course based on my book. It's called Challenging the Story of Behavior. That's November 21st in Hornsby in Sydney. I'll put the link in the chat once I stop talking and have a bit of a break. And there's also a code for that, which is new grad. Let me just check what I put as the code. I think it might be just grad 50, and you can grad 50 and you can get 50% off if you book that this week. So that's for people who are here in the course. As a couple might have missed it, there's going to be a prize for someone on the call at the end. And so you do have a greater chance of getting that prize if you got your camera on, but no pressure. I mentioned the course. There's also the book. I wrote a book, Challenging the Story, a surprisingly simple approach to supporting children with challenging behaviors. It's a book about supporting challenging behaviors. It's written as a story, and you get the lessons through the story. It takes about an hour and a quarter to read. It's an easy read, but it's packed full of insights and strategies and Lots of great feedback. It was an Amazon bestseller internationally in Sydney, US, and Canada. Another webinar that I will be on is I'll be being interviewed by Michelle Bahari in 2 weeks' time on Monday, the 30th of September at 4:15. That's a really good one for practice owners, people supporting people, actually all OTs. She's been looking at the costs of caring and the real problem we're having with burnout and compassion fatigue and moral injury at the moment. I'm lucky enough to be on her sixth one, I think sixth, it's the third in this series. And we're talking about cultivating thriving teams. So we're talking how can we find authentic confidence, authentic optimism at these times of challenge with and uncertainty with things like the NDIS. So now I don't have my spare screen, so I'm just going to take it slow to make sure I end up where I want to be. Hey, is that the screen we want? We're moving on, right? But we didn't move on. That didn't change, did it?
No. Oh,
Let's
wait.
let's try that in
Lucky
an
we're just going to
instant
play.
movie. Oh, it changed on this. Oh, wow. Something funny's happening here, but that's all right. This whole Zoom thing is new to us, hey? So I just want to tell you a little story. Today I was a little bit rushed getting here. Poor Claire was like, Dave, are you alive? Are you there? Because I went to an event in the city with a group called B1G1, Buy One, Give One, and they support people about how to make an impact through the way they give, through essentially donations, but it's a different way of looking at donations. And so instead of just thinking this dollar and that's happening, and usually it's like, I don't know how to do it, and I don't know when we're ready to do it. It's about starting small and just making small impacts every day that impact the lives of all sorts of people around the world. For instance, if people do an assessment with us and move about, we give a week's education, special needs education to a child in Kenya. So that's a cool thing. So what I wanted to offer is for the people that are on the call, and I can put a link in the chat for those who are using their phone at the moment. If you scan that QR code, it's going to take you to a page where you'll have the choice of 3 different types of impacts that you can choose to make, and we will make that impact on your behalf. Yeah, just as a way of saying thanks for joining us, and let's all make sure that we're making an impact in the world, which really leads into our next topic. So if everyone's got that, I'll also put the link in the chat and we will move on to, and it's not doing it for me again, Claire, this whole moving across is doing it, but not showing up. We might end up skipping slides in a second. We're going to move on to vision and values. And so this is something that we're finding really, I personally think, is a really important thing for us to think about with new grads. And so I'm going to come out of, we're not going to put slides up. We're going to try and do, what I might even do is maybe pin Claire and pin myself. There we go. We're there and we can chat about this a little bit. So Claire, Viktor Frankl said, he who has a why can bear almost anyhow. And I think that's really important. One of the most important things that I think we talk about when I'm interviewing people is, why did you get into OT? Why did you want to do it? What difference did you want to make in the world? What's important to you? What do you value? And personally, I think the biggest cause of burnout that I'm seeing is when people feel like they're compromising their values, when they feel like they're not making the impact that they set out to do. And so that's one of the reasons that as a team Move About and myself and Kath decided to do something with B1G, just to find those little moments that we could start to give and make a difference. But vision and values, I think, is really core to us as caring professionals. And so as a new grad, personally, I think it's really important that you just take a minute and really reflect on why you got into this. There's a great Brene Brown free downloadable sheet on values. If anyone wants it, they can just reach out to me and I'm happy to share it with them. Just has a whole list of values, but just think about what's important to me. Why did I get why I want to make a difference with kids, or I want to make a difference with people with physical disabilities or mental health, or I want to be surrounded. I value relationships and connection and community. Knowing these things is really important in finding a workplace because in all honesty, actually there can be great workplaces that aren't the greatest workplace for you if that's not a fit. Do you find that, Claire?
Yeah, I think so. I think like I say, there could be nothing actually wrong with the workplace itself. So it's not necessarily relying on what other people's word of mouth is in terms of, oh, is this a good place to work? Were they really supportive for you? Because, like I say, it's actually the fit that's the issue. So you need to do that stuff. You need to find out just to make sure that they are a good egg and that they do the right thing to support you. But it shouldn't be the sole thing that you make your decision on. You need to think deeper basically about what you're looking for and why. And later on in the chat I can drop in I've developed last year a workbook which basically takes you through a step-by-step process of how do I find the right job. And the first part of that is actually reflecting on, for students, or if you've already worked as an OT before, your previous work experiences as an OT. What did you like and why? What didn't you like and why? And it's that and why, which is a really important part to think about because that is often based on like your values. So who you are as a person, why you got into OT. So if you skip that step and don't really think about why you're doing it, chances are you could end up in the wrong job because you jump to the next part, which is the logistics and the head sort of kicks over, but you do need a little bit of heart, I think, at the start to truly find something that's going to work for you.
And it can change over time as well. And so, for some people, career growth is really important, or learning and professional development are really important. And some places do that really well, other places not so well. Some place family is really important, and flexibility in their hours and their work life are really important. They want to make sure that they can get in and get out, and that's okay. There's no judgment there. But there are better and worse fits for that. If connection is really important to you, we might talk about different places, like versus being in community versus in a clinic versus in a hospital. You might not want to be working in a regional area in the community if connection with team is a really important value to you. And I've had a few young OTs that have completed. I have a scorecard. Is your pediatric workplace working for you? That helps people think through what's happening, what's working, what's not working. I've chatted to a couple of people that have filled that out that have said, oh, I'm not cut out for this NDIS work. And when we talk about it, what we found out was actually they're on their own. They're a new grad or a 1 year out on their own, going from house to house with only 2 to 4 hours a week connection with their team. That wasn't the right fit for those particular people. Whereas if you're an introvert and you're not particularly interested in connecting, that might be something that you're less worried about. There are Again, with learning, everyone needs to be learning and growing. We have an APRA requirement to be doing professional development and growing in our career. And really, we owe it to our families to give our best. But some people are really big on it and some people less so. And so if it's really important to you, you might want to look at professional development. Might want to look at internal learning and just to ensure that you're able to be supported from the start, particularly as a new grad. I'm sorry to say it, you won't be great. You can't, by definition, you can't be great inherently as an OT, as a new grad. However, here's the good news. If you have the right support and the right structures and you're self-aware and have a sense of where you need that support, you actually can do great therapy while you're learning to be great. And so making sure that you have that recipe is really going to be important so that you can feel authentically confident in the job you do with the tools that you have. Anything else you want to add to vision and values, Claire?
No, not really. I think we'd come back to it towards at the end anyway once we unpack a little bit more. So I think that's, yeah, probably good to get us started.
No problems. And I did put the B1G1 link into the chat uh, so that if anyone couldn't scan the QR code, again, if you click on that link, you'll get 3 options that look something like this. There's no catch. There's nothing for you to fill out other than choose the impact, and that'll let Move About know to offer that impact on your behalf. So the next thing we're going to chat about, we've talked about vision and values. I need to just progress these slides along. The next part is what I call the early career roller coaster. I did just want to chat about, it sort of builds on this idea of you can't be great from the start and there is a process. And so something that I want you to know is there is a process, and you and your support systems need to respect where you are along that process, and you need different supports at different times of the process. So I will actually pull this up and chat a little bit while it's on the screen. So I've taken this from the Conscious Competence Matrix, and there's also a great marketing book that I don't think he realized that he got it from here too, called The Dip. But I like this idea of thinking about where are you along the conscious competence matrix. That starts with you start a new role. So this is early career roller coaster. Actually, this is a new role roller coaster. So there might be employers here, managers here, team leaders here, and it's their first time doing that, or they're early in their career in that role. This is just as true for you as it is for a new grad starting their career. But today we're particularly talking about new grads. You start out, it's new and exciting. You're in the unconscious incompetence. There's just, you don't know what you don't know, and you haven't figured it out yet. But pretty soon you hit the top of this first peak and you realize there's so much I don't know. So that's called conscious incompetence. You realize how much you don't know. And that's okay. You don't need to know that. It's your team's job to support you with that. It's your job to ask when you don't know. We sort of have started talking in our clinic about, we don't want you to fake it till you make it. We used to say that, but now it's like, we don't want you to fake it till you make it. We want you to just make it with support. We want you to be able to say to the family, that's a great question. Let me chat to my supervisor and get back to you. Hey, let me have a think about it so they can give you a really thoughtful response next week or during the week or whatever it is. And then you can talk to the team and you can seek out that support. You don't need to fake it if you can just make it with support and you can find that support. So I want to tell you that conscious competence, that first dip of the roller coaster, there are a lot of therapists that burn out in that time, or that really struggle in that time, because let's be honest, you guys are smart, enthusiastic. You got into it because you want to make a difference, and probably been pretty good at most things that you've done to just even get into university for a degree like OT these days. But it's hard, and you really do have to learn on the tools. And so this is really tricky and really hard for people to take, that it's hard. But so you should have support for that. Then you get to this stage of conscious competence. So you start to know what you're doing. And this is the stage where I can do it, but I have to think about everything. And what I want to say is this part is actually kind of tough too. And the reason it's tough is because you think, oh, I know how to do it now, but it still feels hard. Why does it still feel hard when I know what I need to do? And so as OTs, we know about praxis, and praxis has to move through the phases. And when it's novel or when it's new, we might be able to go through the steps, but it hasn't reached that level of automaticity. Once you start to have a level of automaticity, once you start to have kids that you've seen for a while that you're in a groove with, and you can do similar things and then build on those, or you see similar types of kids, then you start to move forward into unconscious competence. You can do some aspects of your job without really having to think too much, without having to labor the thought. And in many ways, it's actually the thinking and deciding that's the exhausting part, not the doing. People say, I don't know how you do your job, 5 hours a day, wrestling and rumbling with kids and doing stuff. And it's like, I love those days. It's the thinking report writing that I struggle with, which tells you a little bit about what I value. But so that I can do it without thinking starts to get energizing, and you start to feel flow in your work at that stage. And then the last stage is reflective competence. So you've got that unconscious competence, but then someone asks you, oh, what do you do there? Or you get a student. It's always the best. The first student that you have that asks you a question and you answer it, and then you look around, you're like, did someone record that? Did you hear me? How smart was I? Did you hear what I just said? Like, you surprises yourself. And often we're talking to the student going, did you write that down? I was really smart then, because you didn't even realize until you spoke it that you had this tacit knowledge to share with the world. And it's really cool to have that. So you have to go through that process. So Seth Godin, who's the marketing guy that talks about the dip, what he says is You don't have to be good at everything. You can't be good at everything. You have to choose a couple of things to be good at. And it takes a while to get through the dip. And so if you're going to commit to get through that dip. If you're not feeling it, then quit the dip early, right? Quit it early and try something else. Don't get to a stage where you're starting to come out the other side and go, oh, it's all too tough, and then quit because you're going to start a new roller coaster in a new career. Get the support and get those structures and systems to help you get through that. I guess one last thing before I'll get Claire to chime in on this is there's different types of supports that we should be giving new grads during this phase. So, we often talk about, and they'll probably talk at uni about, you can give a man a fish versus you can teach a man to fish. And in good supervision, we want to be getting to reflective practice where we're helping people think and reason and problem solve. We want to help them think and reason and problem solve and be reflective in the process. But you can't reflect on what you don't know. So in those early stages of unconscious competence and conscious incompetence, you need to show and tell new grads what to do. And as new grads, you need to ask, can you show me? Can you tell me what needs to happen? What would be some ideas for this? You need to start out by getting a variety. And that's we've got a question coming that we can chat about a bit later, but also the idea of shadowing. I think it's really important to have opportunities to just see the job being done because every job is different and every workplace is a little bit different. So show and tell starts, then you need time just doing. And then you can start to reflect and be more reflective. Once you've got people to compare it to and think about it, you can do that from the start, but that's how I would sort of weight it. Is there anything that you would like to add into that section, Claire?
Um, Probably, I think something to remember, and this is probably a message for any of the managers that are watching along as well, is that sometimes when you're in the midst of a brand new caseload, I'm thinking particularly of maybe a mixed community NDIS caseload, which a lot of new grads find themselves in if they take on one of those big new grad, like one of the big company new grad positions. There's so much, and sometimes we'll talk about that in my next little section, but there can be so much, and you can just feel like every day's new, that like you're forever at that dip, that there's, you haven't connected any dots, that nothing, you haven't learned anything. So it's trying to find those ways to actually objectively reflect on and pull out those competencies, those things that you have done. So I think in a hospital setting, it's kind of done really well in terms of here's a list of competencies, and look, this is what you can do now with distance supervision. This is what you can do now, by yourself. This is what you're good enough to teach someone else to do now. And I think that's sometimes forgotten in the private sector. So finding those little opportunities to reflect on what can they do now that they weren't able to do 2 weeks ago, even if it's the tiniest little thing. It's finding all those little tiny wins and actually naming them and reflecting on them and reminding the new grad that they are making progress, even if the big picture still looks overwhelming. That can help them ride out that dip and see sort of the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah,
So
and I
yeah,
think
the only thing really to add, I suppose you've covered everything else really well.
I mean, that's the value of if you can have on-the-job training, if you can have shadow time, and whether it's in clinic or community or hospital, getting time to see other people practice, and you can call someone in if you have something particularly curly to look at. I guess the other opportunity you have when you don't have those things around is if your workplace can support you to use videotaping. That's not always an option, but we record every assessment in our clinic because I just am too old to be able to figure out how many hops did they do in 15 seconds while I'm watching a stopwatch, and did they keep their hands on their hips and their leg up? And it's just record it. If I saw it, I'll record it, no problems. If I'm sort of confused, I'll record what I thought it was and I'll go back and watch the video. So we actually have they're called Boblov cameras. You can get them on Amazon, and they're Boblov's the brand. They're body cameras, like police body cameras, and with the card in it, they can record up to 8 hours. And so you don't need high quality. You don't want iPhone quality. It will fill up all your drives in an instant. And even these cameras you want to put on webcam quality, the quality's still great, but it's really great as a reflective tool for yourself and also when you're in supervision. So I do have one more point around this that I want you to talk about, uh, but it links to the next section. And so if anyone didn't catch Claire's webinar last week, do you want to just quickly tell us what that webinar is and how people can find it, Claire? And I'll get the next slide up.
So last week I was joining two other OTs, so Angie Contreras and Nicole De La Perel, who are OTs that work a lot with new grads. So they've both got academic background as well, teaching at universities, and they both work as clinical educators and as clinicians. So we ran last week a webinar, probably more targeted towards the managers, about basically busting some myths around what it actually takes to support an early career OT and, give them the right support. So you can definitely still watch it if you're a student or new grad to kind of get a bit of a feel for what can you expect. But we spoke a lot around the actual, hiring process of some things you need to consider if you're a manager before you even hire a new grad, so that basically it's not left up to the new grad to try and find the good from the bad. We want them all to be good, all good options, if managers are being really responsible in terms of only offering new grad positions if they feel they can provide that support appropriately. So went through all those, all the way from hiring all the way to, how can you provide really good support and professional development opportunities and appropriate career progression opportunities so that they stay with you long term. So that's just up for, you can watch that on YouTube now for free. So I'll drop the link in the chat shortly and you can jump on and check that out if that's going to be of interest to you.
And I think one of the best resources that you're going to find is getting on Clare's mailing list. Clare has so many just bits and pieces of support and webinars and a lot of free content, and anything that's not free is way cheaper than what she should be charging. But I think she's in it for the vision, the values of the why, and really looking to make a difference. I truly believe she will be our OT of the year at the Australian Health Awards this year. But
well, if not, I should really be jumping on that while I'm still a finalist, hey, before there is somebody else named.
You should be maximising it. Just, so what that's about is that the Allied Health, the 2024 Allied Health Awards are in Gold Coast in October, and we're lucky enough to have Clare, who is a finalist for OT of the year, with us, which is super cool. Humble brag, Move About is a finalist for Pediatric Team Excellence as well. So you've got two people that are finalists at the Allied Health Awards, which is cool combo. What I would say is Clare's email list is a really good one. Mine will be good one day, but it's not really. But LinkedIn is a great place to find both of us. And again, Clare is the guru of LinkedIn too. And so I really want to encourage people to get on LinkedIn and deal with the DMs that are the bad DMs. There's a lot of smart, thoughtful content, great community. It's really is a great place to see OT's finest if you start following the right people. If you start following Clare and myself, you'll start to pick on other people like Julie Carlisle, Sarah Collison, just a whole host of great people. And if you're finding your LinkedIn boring, I've just recently heard someone say, that's your fault. The algorithm follows what you tell it to. So look up some of your favorite people. Look up Simon Sinek or Gary Vee or those sort of people. So I did say I had a question, and I wanted to ask you, Clare, to mention the workshop you did last week, because we're now going to talk about diverse caseload versus targeted caseload. And I think it was last week or maybe last time we met that you spoke about, I want to link this to the early career roller coaster of how do you get through the curve of getting enough runs on the board with particular groups to feel competent? How do you move from feeling incompetent to competent to confident? And there is a challenge when you have a diverse caseload in the community, and you speak about that so well. Can you chat to that?
And I think in this section as well, it sort of comes back to a question that comes up a lot, and I think it was actually one that was sent through, was hospital new grad roles. So because that is the traditional targeted type, really niche, orthopedic or aged care, OT, hospital position. You get to do things, basically work with a similar type of client, similar OT service, similar assessments, kind of could almost do it in your sleep after about 2 months of doing that same sort of repetition of your caseload. And that's often why a lot of probably experienced OTs will say, yep, back in the day, 10 years ago, new grad rotational position was definitely the best place to go to get that really good repetitive exposure to some core OT skills. So assessments, equipment prescription, dealing with a multidisciplinary team, providing client education. You basically do it day in, day out with lots of repetition. And that's how you can build that confidence, because you get lots of opportunities to do things lots and to feel really good at it. And like I say, you get that feedback about your competencies and, be able to, once you get really good in that little caseload, then you can take those and transfer them to another type of caseload. You might move from, an aged care position to an orthopedic position to a neurosciences position. And those core OT skills that you learned way back at the start, you're basically just building on. But it was that repeated exposure that really set you up for a good start. If you compare that to a community caseload, so I say a lot of the private sector new grad positions are a mobile community caseload. It could involve some peds, some adults with mental health conditions, with physical impairments, and you can see within the space of one day, 4 different clients with all very different presentations. And you can imagine that's a lot of brain space to make room for, to try and get your head around the particular service you're providing. You could be doing a functional capacity assessment for one. Another one, you could be doing a PEDS more, fine motor skill development or school readiness program. For someone with mental health condition, you could be looking at building independent living skills. And for another person with physical impairment, you're doing equipment prescription, all in the space of one day or within the week, and trying to get your head around all those different processes, all the different, occupational performance issues and needs basically for that very varied population. You can compare that to like the hospital caseload, where everyone's very similar in presentation, or even some more of those clinic-based private sector roles like a PEDS clinic, where maybe there's still going to be diversity in the type of kids that you're seeing, but there's a little bit more repetition compared to what you're seeing in a diverse caseload. So what I would say is that sometimes it's really just thinking about what's going to work with you, what are you interested in, and how do you find you learn best? So sometimes people are drawn to the, oh, it's so exciting. I get to learn about everything so quickly. Like I'll be exposed to so much. That's so great. I don't really know what I want to do, so I'll just do everything. But the drawback of that is that, there's too much to learn. You just feel like you don't know anything 6 months in still. That's why if you're a manager, and you can even lead this yourself if you're a new grad that finds themselves in one of these positions where you're just feeling like you don't know what you've improved. How are you different? How have you grown? As a manager, you can be setting up, like I was saying before, those competencies, reflecting on those little skills that they have built up that have been transferable across the variety of different clients they've been seeing, like their ability to choose the right standardized assessment, not just for a particular client group, but for the more core principles of judging the clinical utility of a standardized assessment, or how to actually do a proper search to find appropriate assessments with the different psychometric properties and all those sorts of things. Getting a bit boring there with my examples, so I'm going to move on from those. But it's basically just looking at what are those little transferable things that are common, even though the caseload's different. But the easier way is, if you do have a varied caseload, and this is what we spoke about in the webinar last week, is to try and find opportunities to niche down the referrals that you're giving to your new grad to start with. So yes, your company might see everyone, but maybe you can set it up so your new grad just sees people with physical impairments. That's it. The kids and the mental health conditions can come later. Or you're setting up so that they're just going to do functional capacity assessments. You're not going to make them do equipment prescription or, PEDS, either working with behavior or fine motor type things as well. It's just, just functional capacity assessments, get really good at that. And if you're sort of so that's what the managers can do, but if you're the new grad, it's actually trying to maybe even lead that and ask those questions and say, I'm feeling too overwhelmed with everything that's going on. There's too much. Is there a way that I can, change my caseload around so that I can just focus on this type of referral or work with this type of caseload to start with? But obviously don't just go and say it's all too much, I don't know what you can do to help me. Try and actually really reflect on what you think would help your learning and come with some examples and suggestions like that. That could be, helpful to get a little bit more, those more opportunities for repetition, I suppose. Just as a little bit of a segue back in terms of, I spoke about how back in the day, all the hospital OTs, all the experienced OTs said, do a hospital rotational position. That's where you'll get all the best support. That was probably the right advice 10 years ago. Just a word of warning now that that's not necessarily the case. Just like in the private sector, some of the national new grad companies are really great sometimes the small providers are actually just as great in terms of the support they provide. And it's the same in the hospital. Sometimes you can still get that really good support and supervision, but then there's also hospitals that are really short staffed and that don't have senior staff to provide really good supervision. So it's not a given that every role is, you can group everything under that stereotype. You need to still assess it based on what's available in that workplace and whether it's going to suit you. So that was probably a word of warning. I had a supervision session with an OT that took that advice. And even though she knew, I really want to work aged care, community type caseload, slow stream, working with people and their really meaningful goals, the really full, slow scope of an OT process. Someone told her, yep, you get really good skills if you go into a hospital setting first. So she took that advice, and then a couple of months in, still struggling and thinking, I don't know, like, is it me? What's wrong? And as we unpacked it in supervision, we found out, you know what? You never actually wanted to be a hospital OT. You didn't want to just assess and kick people out when they're still barely safe to go home. You wanted to do all the stuff that comes after that, that's getting back to their meaningful activities and the full scope of an OT process, basically. And you can't achieve that in the setting that you went for. And even the reason she went for it, in terms of, because you get lots of good supervision and lots of good CPD, the understaffing in the hospital meant that wasn't there either. And it just compounded the decision. So I think she's probably looking elsewhere now while still doing her hospital role. But it's just one of those things that you can't, it's not a black and white decision anymore. So lots of different things to consider in those.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree. Personally, I think I believe in planned incompetence. So if I got into OT because I wanted to work with kids. So I really want to be good with kids. So I wanted to find a great place to work to help me be good with kids. I don't think a hospital rotation would have been useful to me. I don't want to do a community, but those things are great for other people. And so I think that story talks to knowing your vision, knowing your values, knowing where you want to be. But you're 100% right. As a pediatric OT and business owner, no two clinics are going to be the same. No two supervisors. You need to really do your homework and have that conversation. So I don't envy you, because to be honest, searching for a job is really tough. And all the ads look the same, right? They all look the same. They're like, great PD, lots of support, flexible work hours, EAP, all this sort of stuff. And they can say what they want in the ad, but what's the reality? Sometimes and I'm not saying they're lying to you, but I do think that if they haven't had good support, they don't know what good support is. Good support for me is not 3 months of weekly or fortnightly one-to-one supervision and then you're on your own, or once a month, or, like I just spoke to someone who's getting once a month externally. No, I'm sorry. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's okay. My therapists get weekly regardless of their level. It just changes the way you do it. We also do group-based supervision. That's not the must, that's not the bar, but you want to make sure that you're getting the support. Last week, you guys also spoke about ad hoc support. I think that's super underrated. People can have, and also programs, I think, can be mixed as well. So people can have a new grad program. So what? Is it good? Is it bad? Who set it up? Where does it come from? There might be someone without a new grad program, but they send you to some targeted programs, like Elise Venks has the Art of Pediatrics. That's a 4-day, quite intensive course on pediatrics. That's probably going to be better than someone's video module program that they have in their clinic, if they're just setting you loose and making you do the work and read through the papers yourself. You can have someone with no program, but they get you in 100 sessions in your first 3 months, and they're talking to you about what they're doing. They're jumping in your sessions. Maybe they're giving you a caseload you can handle and giving you some trickier ones that they come and join. Wow, that's a really powerful offer. If you can start to get, I don't particularly like to just give new grads all the cake kids or all the handwrite. Like, there's got to be a time that you get the trickier kids, but I'm going to give them to you when I can support you. And maybe there's a level where we're actually going to share a kid. Maybe there's a level where you get this kid, but a senior staff has an admin time in that hour, so that if you need them to get their eyes on it, they're there. And so we start to scaffold that support there. But just being aware, you've got to go from feeling not very confident to not very competent to feeling competent before you feel confident and in your zone of excellence. Can I just show you a tool that we use in our clinic to reflect on that? We often traffic light our caseloads. So we get people to just basically their caseload. We used to do it on paper. I still like paper, but just basically highlight them in green, red, green, yellow, and red. Green, I'm across it. yellow, I'm feeling a bit iffy, red are SOS. And actually, we have a focus sheet for supervision that people fill out where they talk about their wins and what they're grateful for and then what they want to work on. And we say, who are your three red zone kids? And people list them. And then we say, are there any themes? And we set their learning goals around the themes that relate to their three trickiest kids. We also, for you, you might do it around what different type of clientele, where do I feel, which of my clientele are a green, which are a yellow, which are a red, and you can start to make sure that as new referrals are coming in, you can say to your employer, look, I feel like I'm learning. You can only learn so many things at the same time. If you get into pediatrics working with kids, I'd say the same thing. Don't challenge their posture and expect them to work on engagement at the same time. Like it's too hard to have those challenges. And that's the same for us in our learning. Here's a tool that we use in our clinic just to reflect on the different words and components of our therapy that we use. That's along the same idea. And so we just call it our competencies traffic lights. And then people will say, do I feel not yet competent? Do I feel competent? Do I feel confident? Or is it in my zone of excellence? And we've just got a whole bunch of words that we use, different aspects of things that relate to our caseloads. And then we've got another one that relates to different diagnostic criteria. But you can do it yourself. You can get your job description and just next to each of the items on the job description, just write an R, Y, or G. And hopefully you have what I find is that when people aren't feeling very successful in their new grad year, we do these exercises and they're like, oh, I'm no good at this or I'm no good at that. And what they find is actually you're pretty competent at most of those things. And then you can really work out what are the areas I want to work on. And that's a good way if you can start to have that structure for yourself. So that's, for me, it's not all on the workplace, but it is a big part for the workplace. But what you can do is be self-reflective to know what you feel competent, what you don't, where you need that support so that you can seek out the support for what you need. Cool. Anything else, or should we move on to?
I think it sort of leads into the next thing, which is potentially more the boring stuff for us, but the important stuff that new grads or students always want to know the answers to. Do you think is it logistics next? Is that what's
It
coming
is,
up on
good
your blog?
guess. Like I
Yeah, yeah.
said, the slide. I don't really need the slide because you've already said it, but the logistics, what are the bits and pieces? Um, okay. Who wants to start this one, Claire?
I think I've got some notes that must mean that it's one of my ones. So I will jump in. So this is, like I said, there's lots, if you follow some of my posts on LinkedIn, there's plenty of different topics where I dive into some of these things, some blog articles on things like KPIs and, what sort of supervision and support, which Dave's already touched on before in terms of what's normal, what should you expect. And I think next we'll move on to how do you actually know if someone can deliver that. So we'll talk about what you should be expecting and asking about, and then we'll move on to that. So I suppose the big questions are, there's probably a few that may be interested a little bit more about a hospital type caseload. And I think I've probably touched on that sort of typical day in terms of you usually have a little bit more of a set caseload confined to one ward, maybe regular supervisor, and you build up, do lots of repetition of a similar thing, very focused around discharge planning, I suppose. But in terms of what does a typical day look like if you're in one of those like community OT caseloads, because I suppose that's where a lot of the NDIS or a lot of the new grad jobs are, and new grads are definitely finding themselves working in that NDIS setting. So typical day, what you can expect as a reasonable expectation, I suppose, if you're community based, probably don't want to be seeing as a new grad more than 2 or 3 people in one day, and you think, oh wow, that's not many people at all. Very flip side different to maybe what Dave can touch on a little bit more about clinic setup later on, but definitely you've got to factor in that you're driving between people potentially. Some of that time isn't actually counting towards billable hours, which I'll talk about in a second what that actually means when you're reading it and hearing sort of horror stories about it. So you might want to see 2 or 3 people in a day, but it's thinking about the fact that if you're going for one of these community type NDIS new grad roles, there's lots of driving, lots of time in a car by yourself. So if you're someone that really likes other people around you a lot, it can get quite, bit lonely, I suppose, if you're spending a lot of your day driving between places. And if you're someone that maybe hates traffic and gets really stressed in a busy, sitting in a car, sitting in traffic, then again, that's going to wear down on you. And I think it's actually some of the recruiters that I've spoken with said that's a lot of the reason why people are leaving jobs, is it's actually they underestimated that impact of travel. So if you're someone that doesn't mind sitting in the car, you've got some great podcasts you like listening to, or cranking up the tunes, then all good, you're set. But just keep that in mind if you're looking at one of those roles, because it's sometimes the part that people forget about. The other thing is, if you're somebody that detests report writing, it was like you know, in your spare, you're like, oh no, here comes the documentation section. I know I'm not awesome at this. It's going to be a struggle. Potentially, don't look at a community NDIS role as your first option, because a lot of what we're doing at the moment is report writing. So we do, you know, equipment, we do lots of really interesting stuff. We do equipment trials for really cool assistive devices. We get to do really in-depth assessment processes with people and really find out what's important to them, what their level of function is. But then we have to turn those into a very long-winded report to satisfy NDIS requirements. And if you're someone that really struggles with sitting down, writing through reports, think back to your uni days. If you could, you know, work really well getting through your assignments, you'll probably be able to find some strategies that work well for report writing. If you're somebody that really, you know, detested getting your assignment work done, essays, you know, took you forever, and you never really mastered the art of doing that efficiently, just a heads up that it's going to be similar if you're doing one of those community caseloads. There's other roles, Dave can tell you, I'm probably sure he's still got some report writing in his more clinic-based role, but it's definitely probably not the same extent if what you're doing is equipment trials, FCAs, which is a lot of reports. Sometimes as well, thinking about back to, you know, do you like people around you? A lot of those caseloads might actually not have a office that you can come into. It might actually be that you're working from your own home office, and maybe once a month you drop into the same cafe or meeting room somewhere for a team get together, but actually they don't have, you know, a central place that you can go to every morning and see other people and have those incidental chats and opportunities for ad hoc questions like Dave was speaking about before. So again, think about if you're somebody that really needs that, then just ask that question later on when we get to the next section about the interviewing process. If do they have an actual office, and how often are people going in there? Like, how busy are they? What's sort of the vibe? How often is it used, to see if that's going to fit for you? In terms of KPIs, so this is, you might have heard billable KPIs or billables. KPI just stands for key performance indicator. Basically, to be able to pay your salary, businesses in the private sector need to work out how many hours of billable work, which is clinical work that you can charge, say, an NDIS participant, that an NDIS participant can be charged for, basically in your day. So that would cover your salary plus all your training expenses, contribute towards all the running costs of running a business, which as a new grad, I won't bore you with. Dave can tell you about those things one day. But basically there's a lot of things. So people sometimes see, you know, the OT hourly rate in the NDIS is $193.99 an hour. Like, nobody sees $193.99 in their back pocket. Basically, there's a small part of that that gets taken to try and go towards, you know, getting the business ahead. But for a lot of businesses, taking on new grads that are providing really good support, they're breaking even, basically. So don't sort of think, oh, you know, they're working me hard, they've made me do X amount of hours, and they're, you know, I'm only getting 1 hour a week support, or and plus a few days of, you know, CPD and things like that. There's actually lots of things that they need to take into consideration. I'll talk about what's reasonable support in a second, but basically that's what it is. So there's no magic number that you can say is, you know, this is fair for a new grad to do. If you're a business owner, I think you can check out the webinar we did last week. We didn't actually put a number on it because we don't want people to think, oh, X is the magic number, and if I'm doing that, it's fine, because it depends on lots of different things. So, and this is something that you can ask about as well, in terms of if they say, so just as an example, a typical one you might hear is that we do 5 hours a day of billables, is what your target would be as a new grad. Basically, what you need to factor in is, do you have admin support? So is there somebody making all your bookings for you, somebody processing your invoices? Because they're not billable tasks. You can't charge the participant for those sorts of admin type things. So if you have to do them yourself, that's taking away all your extra time that you need to have space for doing your learning, doing your supervision sessions, doing your session prep, because you're a new grad and those things take extra time. Also looking at the complexity of the clients in your caseload. So if you've got really complex clients, or maybe lots of diversity where there's 5 different things all happening and you need to do lots of extra self-directed learning to get your head around all those different things, then you can't possibly get through as many billable hours, because there's just more brain space you need, and time to actually do that preparation and get your head around things. So if you're a manager, you can't compare sort of a KPI that you're offering for someone for a new grad that's got a really complex, diverse caseload compared to maybe someone that's in a different clinic setup and they've really scaffolded, like the easy kids, maybe as Dave would say it to start with. It's going to be different demands, and plus all the different requirements in terms of how the business is set up, if there's clinic space or not clinic space, all the overheads and things need to take into consideration. So the main thing as a new grad is to just find out, probably more so about, the caseload itself. So is there lots of diversity? How many clients would you actually have on your caseload at any one time? The more number, the more headspace, the more room you need to leave in your diary to do all those ad hoc reports that might come up at the end of their plans for NDIS participants. So all those different things are important to ask about, but probably really the admin support. So asking whether, is there somebody that can help you do those bookings as well, or do you need to do all those things? And is there an expectation that, you basically are billing the same amount as somebody with 3 years experience within 2 weeks of starting your new grad job? Or do they actually factor in that they're going to give you extra time to do more supervision, more self-directed learning, longer time preparing your sessions, which, spoiler alert, yes, they should if they're doing the right thing. You should be building up slowly. So you want to have a company that's offering a reduced KPI to start with, and then maybe every couple of weeks or every month it goes up slightly, hopefully in line with you learning more and being more independent with your with what you can do, and needing sort of less of that ad hoc support or less of that longer planning time. In terms of that support, so Dave's already touched on definitely that ad hoc support. And what we mean by ad hoc support is basically some companies set themselves up so they go, yep, okay, the guidelines say that OT new grads should have 1 hour per week or 1 hour per fortnight of formal supervision. Yep, tick, we can organise that through an external OT. That's just one part of it. But if you think you're a new grad in a caseload, maybe by yourself, maybe the only OT, and you've got a question about, which form should I use for this NDIS type thing that I need to do, or which equipment supplier is the easiest to get this piece of equipment through, and you have to wait to the end of the week to be able to speak to somebody and ask that question, it's really going to slow down your productivity. So when we're talking about ad hoc support, it's basically someone where you can drop in and say, I'm really looking for this form, do you know where it is? I'm looking for a good supplier that can do this. Who's the best option? And even just having that opportunity to debrief at the end of a tricky, go and do a tricky home visit, you come back and you just need to, unload to somebody, so you're doubting what you did or you think you've missed something. If you have to sit on that feeling for a week until you get to your formal supervision session, then just think about that lost productivity, because your brain's not going to be thinking clearly. You're going to be going back to that worry of those things that that happened earlier in the week. So it's that ad hoc support that's really important. So if you don't have a senior OT or somebody that new grad can go to, it's a lot trickier to be able to just get that externally provided. So external supervisors are great. I provide that service myself, but we can't solve all the support needs of a new grad. And then probably just the extra thing that sometimes comes up is talking about professional development. And again, don't think that if something is named a new grad program that it's in any way better than something that's not named a new grad program. It's actually pulling apart all the different parts of what they're offering in terms of formal support, ad hoc support, and CPD. So for those that are new to the OT world as students, you'll find that you need to do 20 hours of CPD every year to be able to meet your requirements for registration to be a registered OT, and you need to record all that. Probably as a new grad, if your employer is doing the right thing, you're probably going to nail those 20 hours without thinking about it, because that's just often what's needed to be able to get your head around any sort of caseload. But so again, if you're a manager watching this, thinking about what opportunities that you can actually facilitate, but not just sort of paying for access to courses, but making space in their diary. So it's like, yes, you can go to this course for half a day. Don't expect them to then make that up somewhere in terms of the billable hours they missed. Still do all your billable hours, but you can have a day off for this course. It kind of doesn't work that way. You need to give them space so they can actually allocate time to do it as well. That's probably a lot of the logistical questions. And if I've missed anything important, I'm very happy to answer questions if somebody's got them later on. But Dave, did you want to add something more about that clinic type setting or anything else about the logistics?
Yeah. And I'll put a link in there, which is a link to my top 10 things you need to ask about your current or future workplace. I might just show you that doc so you can get that from this list. Covers a lot of the things that Claire talks about, but you could almost interview your potential workplace or your existing workplace around your values, how frequently. So there's all these aspects around caseload. So how frequently are you going to see the clients? How long are the sessions? Because this is the part where I want to say to you that caseload and KPIs are not the same thing. And so Claire sort of talked about it, but I want to say it directly. People will talk about your KPIs are this or your caseloads this. And some people now are talking about, oh, they're advertising, we don't have KPIs. And it's like, well, someone has to pay the bills. So there's going to be a point where you're either meeting your job expectations or not meeting your job expectations. People shouldn't be hammering people are over the head about KPIs. And it took a long time for us to get KPIs in our business because I don't want to be focused on numbers and that sort of stuff. We're in it to make a difference. And it's just a way of going, here's accountability. Here's how we each pull our own to make sure we're a great place and we're helping the most amount of people that we can in the best way we can. But we need to support the people who support the kids. So that needs to be the right match for you. And so Claire talked about 2 to 3 in the community. Like we actually within a few weeks, I think 3 in a clinic a day is something that we want to get people to within a few weeks. It's pretty doable. You got time to work with that. But then so you're in sort of 10 to 15 over the first month, and then we're building over sort of 4.5 to 6 months for new grads, often to 6 months to get to about 23, if I'm going to give you a number in clinic. But like Claire said, it does depend on what the different things that are going on. And so here's the thing I would say though, is that a KPI of 23 at a weekly clinic or a clinic that does regular appointments quite intensively. So at our clinic, a caseload 23 is 23 because we tend to see kids weekly. You might do an assessment on top of that and that balances out the cancellations. If you're at a fortnightly clinic or if you're doing half-hourly treatment, then a KPI of 23 could be 46 kids in your head, or it could be 92 kids in your head. So you do need to ask, how often are we seeing kids? How long are we seeing kids? What will my caseload be? Because there are plenty of young therapists with caseloads of 50, 60, 70 plus. I knew therapists that have had a caseload of 90 to 100 because they're seeing people fortnightly and monthly for half hourly. And need to tell you that that's not wrong to see kids for half hour. It's not wrong to see kids fortnightly, but I think it is wrong to have the same expectations of number of hours that you can do because the administration, the phone calls, the emails, the notes, all of those things are going to relate to one person, whether they're half hourly or hourly. And so just getting those details, I do think if you are seeing more kids, you need more administrative time in your week. A couple of other little things that I just have on that. Just getting a sense of that supervision. Are there pathways to grow? Really just understanding. I guess around numbers, I would just want to share with you guys some things. So I can't tell you what I'm actually literally legally not allowed to tell you what you should be expecting to get paid. But what I can tell you is the award is the Health Professionals and Support Services Award. So if you have a look at that, that's what you legally need to be paid. I think I'm also allowed to tell you that that is terrible. And if you're getting paid on award, walk away from that place. That's way too low. In New South Wales, we also have the New South Wales Health Service Professionals Award. Some people sometimes look at that and think it's the award. That's actually just the pay structure for New South Wales Health, which is the hospital and community sector. Although I would say that probably that's closer to what you should be expecting. So that's more reasonable for what you could be offered. I guess the other thing is if you're talking to a recruiter or sometimes people are talking about packages, really get them to say, here's what the salary is. Here's what super is. Sometimes people will bundle it in and suddenly you look like you're earning $10,000 more than you are. And if this person's offering you 75 or 78 and this person's offering you 85, 85 might be worse. 85 is worse than 78 if it includes super. So really know your numbers and what those breakdowns are. I guess if I was going to say some other things, I really don't think it's appropriate for you to be working as a subcontractor. Really, to be a subcontractor, you need to be an independent subcontractor. So you will need to have your own ABN and you should be quite independent. You should be using your own equipment. You should be presenting as your own business. There's some 80-20 rules around, are you working 20% somewhere else? Are you using mostly your own? There's a whole bunch of different pieces to it. You might get paid a bigger hourly rate, but then you have to take your super out, your workers' comp, your all the things out yourself, your tax out yourself. I think you'll find that it's often not a lot better and it's actually potentially not really legit if you're only working for one place. It's a way that sometimes people can get away from not having to pay super or having less risk paying a higher dollar amount because they're only paying you if you're actually bringing in money. Casual is also really not that legit in our field. Particularly the worst that I've seen is people paying casually, but they're paying a casual rate, but they're really paying it like a contractor. You should have set hours that you get paid, whether the clients turn up or not. Now, you might be accountable for your part in that, but I would probably turn my back on contractor or casual roles as a new grad. Probably casual doesn't fly most of the time. And then the only other thing that I've got in that form to ask people about, Claire also covered, which is what's the admin support? That should be a lot, yeah, so that you can focus on the therapy side of things. And how I really am interested in how good is the business run? What are the business practices? How long they've been around? How do they support people? And I guess on that supervision and support, I sort of hinted to it, and then Claire got to this. You can have our business is a great size business where we have lots of layers of support and people that can help. I know some really great small. I would not discourage you from going to a new like a practice that has one person if that person is going to commit a lot of their time to you. You just got to have those discussions. So the one thing I will tell every new grad is you won't be able to tell from the ad whether this place is great. And I think it's hard to even tell from an interview. If you can actually go and visit the place and get a sense for the team, even talk to the team without the boss around and see, do they still love it? What do they say about it? Can you get on a Zoom call with them or even just a phone call? Really do your due diligence. And I guess that really leads into how do we interview them? Which, was there anything else to add before I move on, Claire?
No, I think that's perfect segue to, yeah, actually finding out, are they just talking the talk or can they walk the walk? And I think 100% right. Please do not trust everything you believe on social media or everything you see in a job ad, because people can say whatever they like. And I know for a fact that there's been so many new grads burnt because they've trusted a job ad. And even someone that seemed charming in the interview that promised everything, there's little things that you can actually basically pick up on to find out if they're yeah, telling you the reality or just painting you the picture that they think you want to hear just to get you to sign on. So
And I genuinely believe everyone got into this because they want to make a difference, like all those owners. But there are different personalities, and there are some old school folk that are. I know a few great therapists that probably should have been lawyers or stockbrokers in the US that are happy to work 70, 80-hour. I mean, there've been times me as an entrepreneur, I'm really excited to do that. And I don't think that's wrong for me to want to do that for myself, but I don't expect that of my team. And I do it if I'm excited about things. It's different because there's a real blurring within my passions of what's work and what's life. I'm glad I live my whole life, but again, I don't expect people to be like that. And we want them to create a you role for your new role. Um, and they might think they're giving good support. Make sure you check out how does that support phase? How long does that go for? When does that change? Because you need that support. So interviewing them, I mean, it's really a lot of the questions that we've just been asking. And I guess I sort of probably launched into it by looking at that sheet that I was showing as well. But OTs at the moment are in short supply and high demand. And so that's really good for you guys. But then I would also say so are supportive workplaces. We are in a uniquely tricky environment at the moment where people are stressed. So we're charging big numbers for families. So most therapists feel really guilty about that. And we mostly don't value our own treatment and what we do. And so there's that stress. It's a big number. And it was a really big number 6 years ago when it came in. It's a less big number for business owners at the moment because I can tell you that salaries have gone up 30, sometimes 50% extra on what they were. My new grads are probably earning 50% more than they were when that latest NDIS rate came out, even though we're at the same rate. So there's a lot of business owners that are really struggling because they got into it because they're good at their craft, but not necessarily because they're good at business. And that doesn't make them a bad person, but you need to make sure we take care of you and that you understand how things are happening. But I want a little bit of empathy for the business owners. But sometimes they're working lower down on Maslow's hierarchy and it's about survival and stress. And that's when they can get into, we've got to do these billables, we've got to do these billables. If there are any of those business owners on the call, I want you to know the most expensive thing in your business is having to replace a good therapist. And that there's a cost of that to our whole community of OTs. And so that's where Move Out was like, we want to support the people who support the kids in our community was something that we started to stress 2 or 3 years ago. We were previously focused on our team and our families, but we need to help everyone rise and support everyone. And I'm looking to support business owners to support thriving teams too. And that's what I'm talking about with Michelle in a couple of weeks. But so just really do ask about the support, ask about how much supervision you're getting and for how long, and does it fade out or do you keep it for a long time? With who? Is it on site? If it's not on site or if it is on site, will you have that ad hoc support? Um, you need to have the confidence to be able to ask things like, all right, so that person's going to do it. What if the senior person leaves? Or what if you leave? Yeah, no, well, you're probably not going to leave if it's the boss interviewing you, but it might not be them interviewing. So what if my supervisor moves on? What will be the plan for me? Because that happens more than you would think. And people go long stretches without a supervisor, or they say, well, you can find your own. That's not good enough. Like I think that, and that's not good enough for me because the work you do is my reputation as well. And we want to really make a great impact. Um, and really getting a sense of what is full, how quickly do I build to full? I sort of talked about a number I had. That's not even, like Claire said, it's hard to talk about numbers because it depends on caseload. Even my number's not very clear because while that's the number for new grads get 3 more hours to write an assessment once a fortnight than the other therapists do. So there are different ways things happen in the clinic, but we recognize that we give you twice as much time to do notes, but we talk to you about how that should shift because we don't want you to get bad habits. I think sometimes that I've had therapists that have got stressed out with their workload, it's always been at the 18 to 20 client mark. And it was for a while there, I was trying to figure out what it was. And this might sound silly, but I think we were too supportive, too kind, too flexible. We gave too much autonomy and not enough guidance. And what happened was therapists were really wanting to do the perfect note and they weren't getting themselves into sessions and they were spending 25 minutes on notes. And then they got 18 and they're like, I can't do it. And it's like, well, you can't do it because you need to get your notes done in under 10 minutes. And that's doable. And that's okay with the work that we do. And when you've planned that out, now we're setting the expectation earlier. We're helping people understand how that progresses. We're helping them book into shadow sessions and not just leaving it up to them. It was a mistake that we made to think that, like this person could think about all the bits and pieces in the future of what was going to happen in their career, even 3 months down the track. They don't know. They haven't done it, whereas we've seen it happen again and again. So we try to help them with that. But trying to set those habits, and for you, you might not have that guidance, but think about notes particularly. How long am I going to have when my caseload is full? And what's my approach to try and get to that being how I write my notes? Because that is, I think admin is probably one of the biggest, second to compromising your values, admin is really one of the biggest causes of burnout that's out there. And I think shadow time is just super underrated. It's absolutely related and it's completely underrated. And so, I know a clinic that didn't have a senior for a little bit, but they sent their therapists to us to observe and shadow doing assessments. Like assessments is so important. And some people let people loose really quick. I'm probably tightest on this because that's my name going out into the world. And I want to make sure that's a really good, useful tool. It's also really stressful to do an assessment without support. And I don't even do things like FCAs and stuff like that. So yeah, support's really important, shadow time and having people review your reports. To this day, even our senior staff get their reports reviewed by each other. Like they like once you go a bit higher, they have a review pool, but you just can't read your own work. There's only so many times you can stare at this same report. Interviewing them, Claire, is there anything you would add?
Just in terms of, like I say, sometimes it can feel uncomfortable. Those questions that we say, just throw these questions at them. You might feel like, I can't possibly ask them a question. What if that means, and they're like, oh, this person asked too many questions, we're not going to hire them. Trust me, it's better. Like I said, the good managers, the good Daves in the world out there that actually want to do the right thing by their new grads will be welcoming those questions because they want the opportunity to prove to you that they're not just saying what they're saying in a job ad, that they can actually show it. Say, yes, go and talk to our latest new grad, go and have a coffee somewhere. I'll leave the room. I want you to speak to them. When you're starting to ask these questions and getting vague answers that sound great, like, we're not really have any set, program for that. We really work around what works for you, or like we're really flexible with that. We can work in with what you want. So it's like, okay, but they're not giving you any specifics around that to demonstrate, okay, can you give me an example of what that looked like for your last new grad? If they can't give you specific, it's probably because they actually haven't done it or haven't done it in a really good way before. So that's probably one way to spot the fakes, maybe. I don't want to scare you that everyone's that there's all these terrible jobs out there, but there are some that unfortunately, like I say, they're stressed, they're desperate to make ends meet, so they just want somebody in there, and they'll say what they need to say to get you to sign on, and think that surely it can't be that hard to support a new grad. We'll figure it out later. We'll figure it out on the run. If you can find somewhere that they've actually got new grads, and not just a new grad that was there for 3 months and left, but a bit of a series of a couple of years of new grads that have gone through their program and stayed, then that's a really good sign that they know what they're doing. And it's not just sort of a promise that is potentially just a promise. Because it's one of those things, if you're new to supporting new grads, it's very easy to underestimate in terms of what it takes to do well and how much time, but not just time and money to do it, but actual expertise. So you could have senior OTs that actually aren't that great or that interested in supervising or educating. And even though there's senior OTs there, if they see the new grad almost as a burden on their time, then that's not a great that's not a great feeling for you to be in those workplaces. So it's not necessarily just looking at, they've got 3 senior OTs there. It's actually, can I chat to those senior OTs? Can I get a feel for what they like about supporting new grads and see how genuine it feels? And that's often a good thing to check out as well. But it's definitely, don't feel bad about asking the questions. If you ever get a reluctance to answer those sorts of questions, and that's sort of your red flag that it's probably not the best workplace anyway, because they're not going to be open to receiving feedback if things aren't going well, and not going to be open to having questions put to them in terms of how come you're setting things up this way in terms of my support. And that's really what you want as a new grad, someone that's open to hearing about what support you need and how you like to learn.
And they're going to check your references. I think you should check their references. I think it's okay. And I think you just say to them, oh, look, I really want to make sure that I find a great job that I'm going to want to be at for a long time. So I am going to ask a lot of questions. I just want to make sure that we're a good fit and so that I can really commit to you for a long time. And so please don't take any offense to it. I would love to hear that you're really trying to make sure that you're going to be with me for a long time. Saying goodbye is hard. So that's great. And I would say if you can get half a day, particularly if you can stay for lunch, if you're looking at a clinic space or with a group or to shadow with some team members, you really learn a lot if you can see what's happening, see how they share knowledge at the end of the session or going into the session or during the session even, see how they're able to, whether they're willing to answer your questions, see how they talk to each other. Those things are really, really valuable to know, is this a culture that's going to support me as a new grad? And sometimes though, it's not the right job for you as a new grad, or sometimes it's not working out at the moment and we need to figure out why it's not working out and think about what to do about it. So let's not even assume that it's not the right job for you. What have I done here? Have you got? Nope, that's our slides with the notes. What are we doing here, guys? Let's try this again in an instant replay. This is the one. when things aren't working out. And so sometimes things won't be working out perfectly. What I want to tell you is that be really careful that you're not doing black or white thinking. So,
Sorry, oh, there you go. I was going to say we still had your screen score now.
so much going. All right.
It's good
Um,
now. It's all good.
make sure we're not moving to, I'm really struggling without my extra screen here, guys, tonight. So you want to work out what the reasons it's not working out, not just black and white, but give it some color so you can, like I said, with those ideas of what are you red, green, what are the different things, breaking down why isn't it working? Is this about our values aren't in sync? Is it that I don't feel like I have room to grow or support to grow in my career? Is it that I don't feel like I've got that work-life harmony happening? Is it about finances? Or is it about connection and like I don't feel like I'm in touch here? What's going on? Is it that I feel like I don't have time to do my admin? Find out what are all the reasons because they're things that you can work on. If you can have tangible things that you can work on, you can speak to your supervisor or your manager. Um, and, hopefully they're going to support you to be able to improve those things. So sometimes people say, look, they're good people. I really love it. But, and I get that I'm just not cut out for NDIS. And then we start breaking it down and going, all right, there's 7 things that aren't working for you here. That's actually not a bad thing to know that there's 7 things because you can start chipping away on those and getting a better workplace. If they're not interested, then you've got clarity about what to look at in the next workplace. So when I did this with 2 people who were working in regional areas in community, and we broke it down, they absolutely would have ended up in the wrong job if they thought, oh, I'm just not cut out for NDIS work. It was really a lot was about connection. It was about regular support, and it was about seeing that there were avenues for them to grow in their career. I've created a quiz that has about 30 questions in it. It's called, Is Your Workplace Working for You? It's in the scorecard. It's in the, I just put it in the chat there. It goes through vision and values, career growth, culture, finance, work-life harmony. It's probably even useful just to do some dummy versions. It'll give basically to give you the behind the scenes of it. There's 3 different answers you'll get for each section based on whether your workplace scores high, low, or moderate to basically give you some guidance on what you can do in those different circumstances. So I sometimes say to people, all right, you haven't got a job in mind, fill it out really well, fill it out moderately and fill it out poorly, and you can start to get a sense of what's happening. If you do have a workplace, you can fill it out or you can just save it for when you get there and be able to consider it. It looks something like this. It takes about 3 minutes to fill that out. And it does give you pretty good customized results based on what you say and some really good guidance. And if you want to chat through the results and figure out how to support you with your workplace, I'm happy to do that as well. So when things don't work out, what else? Is there anything else? So support is really important. And also look for the things that you might be contributing. I know that we want to talk about toxic workplaces, but if you can find things that you can improve on, that you might have a role in what's happening, you can control all of those. You might have some influence over the workplace. There's things you just got to accept about the workplace, and you might need to find something else. You can influence a workplace, but you can't control it. You can control your own actions. And so there are people that are able to make a big shift without shifting a workplace. But the more detail you have, the more color you give this and move away from black and white thinking like this workplace is toxic, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not as good as her, or I'm not cut out for NDIS. Those all or nothing things, they're not helpful. They're not going to give you any guidance. Really break it down. And chat to people. If you're too scared and you don't feel comfortable chatting to them, that's a big problem. That's a big problem that maybe that's not a play. You've got to work out, is that about my previous experiences coloring my level of comfort, or is it about my relationship and trust with this place? Because relationships are everything. Yeah. I want to tell you, there is a supportive community out there. I'm pretty sure that Claire has never received a DM in LinkedIn that she hasn't responded to and spoken to the person or referred them on. She is the connector of all connectors. And I personally think that I'm a really good connector, but there's no one like Claire. And I have to tell you, if Claire says, Dave, I've got this person in PEDS, can you answer their question? I've never ever had the guts to say no to Claire. I never would anyway, but Claire has such a giving heart that she would support you, and I would support you just because you knew Claire. I would also support you if you DM'd me as well. So just know there is a community of OTs out there eager to support as well. Okay. Well, not too many stuff ups with the slides, Claire, but we're getting there. You got to show some vulnerability. I've got to show some vulnerability. It's part of the
But the
process.
only thing extra I'd add, Dave, before we go to the wrap up, I suppose, is just don't assume. You've said, reach out, tell your employer, but don't assume that they know you're struggling. So sometimes I've seen posts in Facebook groups where it's like, is this normal? They're expecting this. I'm really struggling with this. And the first question I always think about is, have you actually told your employer? Because sometimes, like Dave said, business, particularly in the NGIS sector, is really tough. If you're not a squeaky wheel asking for help, they're probably, you're going to get pushed down their list of priorities to worry about, because they're going to think, okay, great, they haven't complained, maybe they're okay, I can worry about the 10 other things on my list. Whereas if you spoke up, they're probably really happy to actually try and help you. So don't think, if don't assume that if you haven't told them that they know what's going on, and leave without telling them. Because if you leave without telling them just because you do all this background checking, I think, yep, the problems with me or the problems with the workplace, but you haven't actually brought it up with them, you've got no opportunity for them to address it. And chances are you could have left the perfect workplace, if you'd only just spoken up and done what Dave said in terms of actually reflecting on what is the issue. So it's not just going and say, this isn't working, throw your hands up in the air, fix it. It's doing that deep work first to find out what is exactly the issue, and think about what are some suggestions you'd like them to offer you. How would you like them to support you, and put it out to them. If they don't come to the party, that's when you know, okay, it's not for me. I probably do need to move on. But kind of, yeah, don't leave without having that conversation. Like Dave said, if you don't feel that it's a safe space to have that conversation, then that's maybe a sign that you need to leave anyway.
And again, I think a good employer, if you went to them and said, hey, I really care about you and I really care about this business. I really want to be here for a long time. I have to tell you, I'm really struggling, and I've been having thoughts about, is this the right job for me? I'm really concerned about my capacity to do this, or about whether the demands are right for my level. Can we talk this out? Even if you don't have the answers, I think creating space, a good employer will be like, yes, let's think through this. Let's have a look at what's happening. Maybe let's time track for the week and see where your hours are going and how you're doing things. Or maybe let's look at who are your red zone kids, so we can work out that level of support and I can make sure that I'm available for it, or we can add some extra supervision. So yeah, communicate. I mean, communication is everything in what we do, but particularly with our clients, sometimes we forget relationships and everything with our team as well. And so, look, I haven't done this by accident putting this in again. I do think that compromising your values and not feeling like you're making a difference and living your vision is something that's going to be a real deal breaker for you. So I'm not going to talk about it again, but I did just want to put it back in there and say, hey, make sure that you're living your vision and your values. And if you didn't yet, click the link and give. That'll be up so that you can give to B1G1. We'll give on your behalf, and you can choose which particular cause is the right fit. And then our last slide is really just asking, are there any questions? We do have some that have come through. No, I've done it again, Claire, haven't I? This
Yeah.
whole not having this whole coming to move about has been a real struggle for me, when I probably didn't even need to show the slides for these things. Any questions? I totally needed to put that slide up just because I created it. And there's no questions in the chat. We're happy for people to come off mute, but Claire, there were a few questions that came through. Do you want to launch those? I just realized I didn't actually share.
Yeah, that's right. Now, one I think we've kind of touched on, but it's probably a good one for you to answer, is just 100% answering the question of, is it appropriate to ask to shadow a team member for half a day when you're looking to choose, is this the right job for me? Is it okay to actually ask to come along? What's your take as a business owner if someone asked you that?
So I've just put in my course, Challenging the Story of Behavior, a surprisingly simple workshop on supporting challenging behavior. You can get 50% off with the code GRAD50, and that's whether you're a grad or a business owner, and you can take it back to your teams as well. Of course, like to me, it's a must. It's like a non-negotiable. I honestly, and I'm a bit tough, but I can't comprehend. Um, there are so many curly kids out there that you're going to come across, and people do it without support. It's possible, but man, to be able to go and observe and like see how other people are handling things is a super, super important way to be able to learn. And so, yes, you absolutely can ask that. And I think you can absolutely expect that. I think you should ask that and get a commitment to how much of that you're going to get from the interview because and I would challenge you though to do more than shadow. Do more than just go in and sit in and watch. Try and figure out what notes am I going to do? Am I going to track what activities and think about how I could grade them? Am I going to we're moving to a model with our next batch of new grads where we're setting up a framework where we're going to be getting them to do, we've given them a structure to think about what's happening in the session. So they will write the treatment note and the session and the therapist that they're shadowing will review that treatment note with them and chat to them and reflect with them around how what's happening so that they can start to learn about the process, not straight away, but pretty quickly they're going to be doing some of those things to start to chat to the therapist, chat to the therapist to answer the questionnaire that we basically give them for each session. And then they'll write up the note and they'll reflect on where that is. We're also going to highly recommend Everbility, which is an AI software that can help you. I'm a bit on the fence with new grads about whether you should learn to do your notes yourself or whether you can use Everbility to organize them. And where I sort of come off the fence is, I have to be honest, I used Everbility, which is basically ChatGPT with the right privacy filters for APRA. Um, I did better notes. I've been practicing for more than 20 years. And what I did was I rambled all the things that happened. Johnny came and mum was with him and we were in this room and we did this activity, this activity, this activity. I noticed improvements in this area and this happened and that happened. And I just ramble it. And I said, turn it into a soap note. And I was like, oh my God, that's a soap note. That's amazing soap note. And I learnt through that process. So I really don't care if you can write efficiently as long as you can get to the end product. So I do think it's okay to use those tools as long as it's not making stuff up and you're feeding it the right information to be able to put in there.
Yeah,
But
still
shadowing is the
use the shadow.
question. Yes, you should be allowed to shadow. Yes, you should ask in an interview. Yes, you should expect opportunities, particularly around kids that are new, different. And it might be that shadowing is not possible for a similar kid, but they might be able to pop into your session as a next level. It might be that reviewing a video of you and the kid might be a way of doing things, or do they have videos of them doing it? Be flexible. Not everyone can do everything, but you shouldn't just be expected to go and run with it.
Yeah, thank you. I've got another one for you later, but I'll answer one to give you a minute to catch your breath before I throw that one at you. So there was one that came through. It's probably a better one for me to answer, which was tips for securing a hospital rotational position. So I'll keep it brief, but firstly, probably the first thing is just question why you're going for the hospital rotational position in the first place. So if it's just because, like this new grad that I had supervision with last week, that was because someone told them that's where the best support is and that's where you'll learn the best skills, it may not necessarily be the case and it may not be the right place for you that's actually going to support your learning. But if you've done that deep thinking, you think, yes, actually, I've had a placement in a hospital before. I know the place that I'm applying for has actually experienced OTs and it's really going to be good. Then unfortunately, the new grad hospital positions are probably one of the ones where you can't just turn up basically in your hoodie and they'll give you a job. There is actually a bit of competition still for those rotational positions. So you need to do your best effort in terms of putting the effort into your CV, putting the effort into selection criteria, and having really good specific examples that demonstrate your skills. And probably it might be one of those ones where if you're really serious, actually reach out for some mentoring or some support to get someone to review how you're going to answer questions. Really practice not just writing answers to possible interview questions and reading them, but actually putting yourself in a situation of getting someone to ask you them where you look at it and say it without your notes and really try and put your best foot forward for those interviews. But what I would say is if you actually miss out on those highly competitive roles, don't think that that's it, that you're done forever, you'll never get into a hospital. there's lots of casual jobs going for like level one type positions that might just be a locum. So if you're in the financial position where you don't necessarily have to have a permanent full-time job straight away out of uni, you can maybe take on a 4 day a week or a 3 month locum or something like that. Then do those, because there's usually less competition. Often, the more experienced OTs are maybe locked into mortgages a few years into their careers, and they can't take those locum jobs. If you've got that flexibility, that's a good way to basically get some runs on the board, some months of experience under your belt, so that you can actually then go into a more permanent position that says, yes, I've done a 3 month in a similar hospital setting. These are all the skills I can now demonstrate, versus, I'm a student that had a 2 month placement or something in a hospital. That's helpful as well. But just, that would probably be the main tip, is to look into those other level one positions, particularly the short-term ones or the casual ones, even if you're looking to try and get some experience in that area, if you decided that's definitely for you. That's probably it on that. But the next question for you, Dave.
Just before you do it, we just lost someone, so I'll email her. But I did say there'd be a prize again if people at the end. And so I'll do that before a few more people drop off. And I said if you have your camera on. So thank you to the camera on people. But we do have a small crowd that turned up tonight, even though we had 50 or 60 registered. So I'm going to pop that in the chat. That's my email. If you email me and say, I'd like a free copy of your book, I will send you one to say thank you for joining us tonight. So that's the prize. Let's talk about the question.
So the question was from actually a manager that signed up. So it says, what is the new grad's greatest challenge and concern when starting a new clinic-based position?
I think everyone's different, and so people come with different concerns. So getting to know them and know their strengths and challenges. The thing I've realized is that, in the past, I've probably been a bit too laissez-faire, a bit too, you guys are adults, you're a grown-up human, you can figure out how to use your time. And if I give you the opportunities to jump in sessions, or if I give you the opportunities, you work that out. And what I found is actually people thrive with a bit of structure and guidance to be able to spell that out. So it's always good with the supervision and to be able to really work people through the case part. But in terms of the self-management, I sometimes think the self-management is so much harder, even for myself, than the client management. So just guidance around like have templates, for God's sake, have templates, but then help people know how to not just copy the template, but be able to individualize it for the client that's in front of them. Help them with notes, help them know how long to do that, how to plan out their day, how to time block and make sure that they're planning for their sessions, how to think through planning for their sessions. All of those things are really important. Admin is a super big killer. So making sure that they have good practices of getting their notes done, chipping away at reports, know how they can do bits and pieces. And it's always a concern for me when someone said, oh, I just need a big block of time to get my report done. And it's like, well, I can do 5 minutes of scoring a VMI while I'm waiting for a client who's running late. Now, if you can do the 5 minute things, and so I spell out those things where it's like, I give myself tick marks and dopamine hits for parents return to form back. I've scored the VMI. Now I've entered the scores into the report. Now I've summarized it. I give myself lots of dopamine hits and check marks and break down those tiny components. And then I can use 5 minutes. I can use 20 minutes. I can use 40 minutes. If you're not using the 20 minutes and the 30 minutes, you're in big trouble, because there's only so many hours in a week, and there is indirect work you have to do that isn't billable but has to be done. And the reality of it is adulting, and you're getting paid to do a job that there is a fair go piece where if you're not getting it done during your hours, you've got to get it done because we've got to do it for the client. So as a manager, you can say it's their responsibility, but we want them to be successful, and we're all successful if we can give them some guidance and give them some structures and give them some rhythms and maybe even some accountability to let them know how to do that. That's super helpful. And for the new grads, finding those good practices, really asking, how can I get good habits, good notes hygiene, so that I'm, acting like I have 24 clients when I only have 15 is a really good way to do it. And then using the other time to learn and grow and shadow and do their new grad program. We call ours the 0 to 100 is your first 100 days. And then we have other things on top of that.
Yeah, there's probably one more that maybe you can touch on as well. It's sort of a bit of a comment, a little bit of a question, but there's some internationally qualified OTs that I know have actually come along today as well,
Mm.
and they're reflecting on the fact that finding a new job in Australia, it's all new to them, I suppose, and should they be considered sort of at that new grad level? And I suppose maybe as an employer, someone that employs more experienced OTs, maybe not necessarily Australian trained. What are your thoughts on advice in terms of if that's what they're thinking, or how do they should be selling themselves to employers to try and find those roles, or sort of what supports they should be, setting themselves up with as well?
Yeah, Sally Pearman's a great supervisor in the Sydney area, and she referred a great therapist, Jackie, to us who had all this experience, stacks and stacks of experience, but then had a break to focus on her kids. And she came and she sort of was like, "Oh, I know I need to start like a new grad." And I think my answer was a good answer, which was she had 12 years experience before she took this big break. My answer was, I don't think you need to be treated like a new grad. However, we can chat about maybe you should be supported like a new grad initially. So I don't want to think of you like a new grad, but I want to support you because you're new to this particular, actually this area of practice was new. And that would be true if you were coming from mental health to pediatrics, if you were coming from OC rehab to pediatrics. In some senses, you would be we should expect businesses to do it. Now, the offset might be that's a lot more labor intensive. So you might say, I do have things to learn. So initially, I want you to be able to treat me somewhat like I'm new to that particular area. So I'm willing to, if you're having trouble finding a job, you might say, I'm willing to negotiate a lower rate of pay in my first 6 months while I get the ropes, and then I would be at this level. Could we discuss how we could have a slower start like a new grad might have, because I'm also finding my feet in this and this area. However, I think I will find at my feet, but I would like that support to make sure I'm really good for you. Does that make sense? It is now 8:40 at night. Am I stringing my words together okay?
No, no, I think that makes sense as well. So yeah, definitely it's thinking about it depending on, and it's the same whether you're internationally qualified or just moving to a completely new area. And even our ARPA registration says if you are moving to a new area, you need that extra support, and that's what you should be looking for. But the flip side is the reality of the private sector at the moment is that the NDIS rate isn't actually generous as much as the public and the politicians say it is. It's actually not generous to try and provide really good sort of new grade quality support for an experienced OT. So if you're needing that support, it's sort of maybe just managing your own expectations around and negotiating that reduced salary that maybe can be reviewed once you're actually, hopefully delivering a higher quality service or, higher productivity, whatever it is, than maybe what the new grads are in 3-6 months time. But that's probably what's maybe going to make it more appealing for you to be recruited is, they don't see someone with 12 years experience. They see someone that's is willing to take on that more new grad early career salary level and support, but can hopefully upskill a whole lot quicker than maybe what a new grad could.
And what I think I would say to both internationals coming in and early career therapists, maybe not new grads, but certainly early career therapists, that if you've landed in a job that doesn't have a lot of support, but they're paying you like 5 grades above your level because they really need someone, and they're sort of often what you see is businesses promoting people to team leader positions when it's really not, like 2 years is really not quite right. We don't do that, but some places feel like they need to do that. I think if you're getting paid a lot above the level that you're at, you need to make that decision of whether you do that or not do that. But you might also say, I'm getting paid this much above, I'm going to seek my own support. Really think about what's going to help me still be here in 30 years' time. And maybe you want to be working in a regional area and it's just not possible for them to support you out there and have that shadow time, and they're paying you $20,000 more than a city job. Maybe you do just pay for your $10,000 of your own supervision so that you feel competent and then confident and then really great at what you do and totally love what you do. I think not feeling competent in what you do is going to be a deal breaker just as much as, breaching your vision and values. Cool.
That's it. There's no more questions that came through beforehand. There was sort
So
of more.
maybe we'll stop recording, and just if there's anyone who's not comfortable asking in recording, otherwise we'll say goodbye. But thank you guys. Thanks everyone on the recording, and I'm going to hit stop. Thanks, Claire.
Thanks.